Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is our Year to Shine, and tonight is another discussion on Louise Hay and Cheryl Richardson's book, You Can Create an Exceptional Life. We are in chapter 5 now, and I mentioned the title of this chapter last time. It's called Don't Break a Habit, Dissolve It. And it isn't what I expected the chapter to be, but it's better. There's some real zingers in this one. And bear with me as I go through it, because I should have actually put like little sticky notes in on the best lines, but there are a few and I'll pull them out. So what do you think of when you think about breaking a habit? And I just mean, like, if you think of breaking something, there's pieces of it everywhere. So that's one analogy that Louise and Cheryl are talking about. So if you really want to get rid of a habit entirely, then they say don't break it, because if you break it, then there's still pieces of it everywhere, and it might actually either come back together, or you will be reminded of it, or you might fall back into that. But if you dissolve it, then it just evaporates, right? Or something. I don't know, if you think about the way that it's completely gone. So where do these habits come from? They kind of come from the great beyond or whatever, right? So then if they dissolve, they go back there. There's no remnants of them even being here. So I thought this chapter was going to be about, I don't know, just like a typical habit forming, habit breaking chapter, but it's not. It's more about the affirmations, and it's more about problems that people struggle with. And most often what it is, it's our thinking. What are we talking about in this book mainly, right? It's about affirmations. It's about noticing that you are not thinking positively. And I was thinking, as I was reading this, back to a few years ago with the company I used to be associated with. We had some coaching sessions with this professional coach, and one of her techniques was, for 30 days, you were supposed to set an alarm 3 times a day, and you were supposed to stop and then write down in this journal, what am I thinking right now? So imagine if you did that throughout the day. You probably would realize that you might be irritated with something, or you might be beating yourself up, or you might be anxious, because that's a habit as well, getting really caught up in the anxiety of things. So the first step with a lot of things is becoming aware of it. And Louise says that if you get to the point where you can even stop beating yourself up for having these negative thoughts, you can make it more of a positive thing by kind of stopping and going like, wait, I'm doing that thing again. I'm thinking negatively, or I'm twisting this situation around, or I'm making it much worse. So that's the main gist of realizing and being aware of it, and not beating yourself up about it. So Cheryl starts the chapter with a discussion about her and her husband. They were having a fight in the car. They had taken a wrong turn, and they were both super agitated with each other, and they were going somewhere really fun and exciting. They were going to go, I think it's at Universal Studios, right, where they have Hogwarts and you can go and see Harry Potter stuff. So they obviously wanted to go and have a fun day, but here they are, and they got turned around and they're yelling at each other in the car. And so Cheryl thought about Louise and thought, okay, I'm going to try a different approach to this. So she says that she put her hand on his hand, and like, I don't know, he had it there in the middle of the seat area. And she just did some visualization where she imagined love coming into the car and love everywhere. Remember, we talked about blessing everything, blessing the road, blessing all the drivers. She did this thing, and she thought about sending it to his hand and sending it to his heart. And she said one thing she noticed was that this actually had a really positive effect on her as well. It calmed her down, and she noticed in turn that he really softened, and they were able to just sort of get through this really stupid, trivial argument, and they got to Universal, and they had a lovely time. And Louise talked to her about it on their next visit, her and Cheryl, and she said, now see, you you surrendered the ego, even though I think in the situation Cheryl describes it as she was right in the situation, and she really couldn't deal with just like giving up the fight and letting someone who's not right think they're right. Do you struggle with that? I know some people just have to be right, or they just have to make their point. I remember also in Dr. Dyer's book, one of the 10 secrets to peace and inner peace. In that book that he has, one of them I remember sharing with you briefly. One of them is just surrendering that you have to be right, and letting it be okay that you could actually like walk away from a situation and just say to somebody like, I never thought about it that way. You know, and then you don't even have to say like, you're an idiot, you're totally wrong. that is not factual or whatever. So if you can surrender this ego, that's a big part of it too, of dissolving the habit of your ego taking over and really focusing on bringing out the love and the blessings and the positive, the peace. And so she starts to talk to Louise about how, like, her doing that, how did it affect her husband? She, you know, and again, I think Louise said this at the beginning. It's not like we're trying to understand how this really happens, but it does happen. And they were both talking in their own experiences about different things. Like, so we know that Louise was big in the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And she said that one of the things that a lot of the male AIDS patients that came in were struggling with was that most of them, like 90%, she said, or more, were abandoned by their family just for the fact that they were gay. And it was something that they just had this horrible feeling about their families. Usually they were angry, they felt abandoned, obviously, because they were. And so one of the things that Louise had them say was not unlike what I said last time about if you had someone at your work and you said, like, I get along with everybody, especially like that person that you don't get along with. And so she would have them say something to the effect of, all of my relationships or my family relationships are harmonious, even with my mother or like whoever was really the most important one that they were maybe most hurt by. And she talks about, again, about mirror work and being your own ally in the mirror and just being like, we've got this, I'm here for you, I love you, and just constantly saying that over and over again. So she says, how could that work? Because you know what I said about affirmations, where I feel like I can't get on board if there's too much of a rub. I can't say I'm a millionaire if I don't, like, I could say every day my balances are increasing for the better. We have a kitty that's trying to be with us. But according to Cheryl and Louise, I should be throwing that out the window, because they are saying in this chapter that the harder it is to say something, the more you should say it. So if those people were struggling with their family relationships and they just, every time they thought about that, they were feeling horrible, like, oh, I don't have a family anymore, they don't love me, I'm bad, they're embarrassed by me, whatever all these thoughts were, we're supposed to replace those with something like that statement of, all of my relationships in my family are harmonious, even with my mother, or insert whoever. And Louise said that in the majority of cases that at least one parent came around within 6 months of somebody really focusing on that. And she even shared that when the parent would show up at the meetings, that they would all give a standing ovation, and they, and it was like, it was life-changing, because usually that parent realized how much love there was there, and how they were just mostly afraid of what are the neighbors going to think, or something to that effect. But it wasn't like they didn't love their child anymore. So Louise had that example, and also Cheryl shared this one with her and her husband, and she also was talking about a a seminar she was giving where this woman was talking about a work situation and was just going on and on about all this drama in her office, and Cheryl was trying to reframe it, and the woman just said, I can't do that because this person I work with is an idiot, and was saying all this horrible stuff. And Cheryl also realized in that point it was another sort of ego thing where it was like, this person is not ready to change. So it made no sense for her to keep pushing for this person to change. And there was a good statement about that. Hold on. And let me see if I skipped anything that I wanted to say. I talked about always having to be right. The truth is that we actually invite positive changes in our lives and relationships when we're soft and open to listening. That's not exactly what I was looking for, but that is true, right? Yeah. And also, you cannot get to a solution when you're focused on the problem. We talked about the law of attraction, and what you focus on is what you're going to get more of. So if you constantly keep, like this woman at the job, focusing on the work problems, what do you think she's going to notice? All of those problems, right? And what about complaining? I'm sorry, I'm jumping around, but I'm going to just find what I find. Don't you realize how much you complain when you really stop? Say you did write that journal thing every 3 hours or something. How many complaints, you might not say them out loud, but they might be in your head. You're on the road and you're like, ugh, people can't drive, or they didn't put their signal on, or just like somebody calls, ugh, why can't they look that up on the internet, or something like that. You're just in a constant state of aggravation and complaining about things. And the more you do that, yeah, she says that she was an inner complainer, a chronically irritated gal. And that she realized that she was just constantly griping about the same things over and over again. And then how is that going to make anything better if you just keep regurgitating what you don't want? Most people have created a habit of constantly complaining, Louise says, even if it's in their mind. Each time we do this, it is an affirmation. So you can have negative affirmations too. It is an affirmation, a very negative affirmation. The more we complain, the more we find to complain about. Life always gives us what we concentrate on. The more we concentrate on what is wrong in our lives, the more wrong we will find. Yes. The more wrongs we find, the more miserable we will become. It's an endless cycle. We become a constant victim of life. Can you relate to that? That was one of the zingers that I read. And I went, oh, yeah, that's perfect. So when we feel like we're in a rut, why would we keep complaining? And like, why wouldn't we want to change it? Like the woman at the conference, she was not ready to change. You cannot force somebody to change. They have to be ready. And I think about this, I've mentioned before that I work with a therapist. And sometimes if she comes up with an idea about something that I know that I won't do, like she'll say something like, why don't we work this week on, like, you can do a mindfulness thing every day, you know. It's like, I know I won't do it, and I'll just be irritated that I even said I would do it. So I've gotten to the point where I realize that I usually personally know the answer, or I can think of something that I will do and something that I will look forward to, versus somebody giving me something that I don't either want to do, or I just know that I won't be motivated to do, I guess is another way to say it. So you have to be ready to change. You can't just say these affirmations and not be ready. And later, as I go through this chapter, an important thing is you cannot also, is what I was saying, the word can't, you couldn't really hear that. You cannot just sit there and say affirmations over and over and over again and not put your head and heart into it. So in some cases, there might be action. So say you are affirming that you're work situation is more harmonious, then you might have to take some action. You might have to stop partaking in the gossip or even listening. You might start wearing headphones and just doing your work and not even noticing all the drama. So there is action in most of these cases. Now, when I'm thinking that, I'm thinking, well, what kind of action was there with the guys who were saying that their family relationships, and especially with their mother, were harmonious? Was there, I don't know that they were taking any action, but it did still work. So that sort of contradicts it, but both of those things were said in this chapter. But Cheryl was pointing out that our head and heart need to be involved in these affirmations. And if you were going to be taking affirmations from an Abraham Hicks standpoint, Abraham would say that you also need to get your feelings involved. Like you're visualizing, like what would it feel like if I were in my chair and it was so relaxing at work and everybody was smiling and getting along and there was no drama, like trying to conjure up that feeling too as you're saying the affirmation. And that might be hard if you're really in the depths of crappiness. Okay. Whether the habit we want to dissolve is complaining or something else, it is the same process. And she's talking here about the dissolving part that I mentioned. We need to remember that we created the habits that we're in and that we live with them now. And who's in charge of changing them? Us, right? If there's anything negative in our lives, we want to find out how we are contributing to holding it in place. What are we doing to attract and maintain negative conditions in our world? We are all powerful creators who create consciously. And Cheryl says, my experience has taught me that it is vital to a happy life that we become consciously aware of the negative chatter in our minds. What are we thinking? Why are we thinking this thought? And what is the thought creating for us in our world? Imagine if you sat down with your negative thoughts and you asked that, what am I thinking? Why am I thinking this? And then what is this creating in my life? So it could be that it's creating agitation or aggravation, or it could be that it's just creating drama. You'd have to really think about that. And again, I mentioned the thing about not beating yourself up and just saying things like, the next time you catch yourself doing it, say, oh, I caught myself again. That's great. It's part of the dissolving process. I'm getting there. That's Louise. She's so positive. So the idea is to stay present or look toward the future with a positive outlook as much as possible. Okay, so aside from the complaining, Cheryl goes on to mention a few other things, like money. People have a habit of negatively worrying and thinking about money. And it seems like in both of their experiences, they say that a lot of people just think, if I had money, all my problems would be solved. Or I would be happy if I had all the money, or I won the lottery or something. And they go on to talk about how that is not true. And there are studies, and they mentioned something in here too about how a lot of people that win the lottery, they maybe didn't know how to manage it, they weren't ready for it, they just blow it, or they get addicted to drugs, or they have tons of debt. It's like a year later. It's not even been a positive thing. So there wasn't a shift in consciousness before they won that money. So it didn't change their lives. And I think about my own life, and there have been times in my life where I've had a lot of money, and there are times in my life where I've had very little money. And I can attest to the fact that I've been happy to a varying degree in any circumstance with that. Yes, I think money solves some things, and it is nice. It maybe will allow you to relax, or you don't have to work as hard, but it comes with its own set of circumstances. And there's a large discussion in here about money in general, and especially women that worry about, and I hadn't really thought of this, sometimes women have this thing where they feel like they can't make more money than their dad ever made. Did you ever think of that? I hadn't thought of that. Or they don't deserve money, or they just had really negative things said to them about money growing up. So we're definitely a product of our past. So some of those thoughts we might take into our lives, like money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to work really hard to have any money, things like that. And so if we can change some of the things, she has some affirmations in here about money. I gratefully accept all the good I have in my life like right now. Life loves me and provides for me. I trust life to take care of me. I am worthy of abundance. Life always provides for my needs. Abundance flows into my life in surprising ways every day. I like that one. My income is constantly increasing. I prosper wherever I turn. And remember, when Louise gives us these, it's always about a paragraph, but you can just choose one and say it. And imagine if you just started saying it every time you thought of money. Maybe you put it inside your wallet. So every time you open your wallet, then you think about abundance flows into my life in surprising ways every day. Now think about what I said about the head and heart. If you start to be living in this way, that abundance flows into my life in surprising ways every day, if you get your head and your heart in that statement, you might make different choices. Your abundance and the fact that things are flowing in might make you more conscious about making better decisions about what's going out, right? Because you want to hold on to your abundance. Or maybe you want to give it to other people to make the world a better place. But I can see how you have to get your head and heart involved in something like that. It can't just be you saying that and then going out and spending all your money at the casino the next day. I mean, maybe more abundance would come in a little bit from that. And also, they both share that it's really powerful when you can write down affirmations. Maybe like, if you got in trouble at school and you had to write the same thing over and over again on the blackboard, this would be a positive thing, though, where you'd be writing the same statement over and over again in a journal. So Cheryl encourages us to ask ourselves, what is one habit that I need to dissolve to create the life that I want? And you can insert, she's got, the financial life, or maybe the work life, or the home life. So what is one thing that you need to dissolve? And then she encourages us in the next 24 hours to do something. This is very similar to one of the extreme self-care challenges that we had. In terms of money, maybe it's stopping using your credit cards. It might be paying your bills, filing your taxes, just things that you've been putting off doing. Or you may need to look at a second job just to pay off a loan or something. So when you affirm your intentions and you take action, you align yourself with universal energy, inviting life to rise up and meet you. If you're not sure what step to take, ask a trusted friend or family member for advice. Someone who knows you intimately and has your best interest at heart. That's a good example. All right. Here's another common problem many of us need to work on: wishing and hoping that those around us would finally get it and change. And I'm thinking again of Abraham, where the statement was always they would be perfect if they would just change. If they would just change, they'd be perfect. But you can't necessarily change somebody. You have to change internally. It's a happiness is an inside job. So you have to really raise your own vibration. And then what might happen is, and I've found this before, sometimes when your own energy changes, some of those people that were bothering you, they just don't even blend with you anymore, and you notice that they just stop asking you to do things, or you have the confidence to say, I'm using my time in other ways or something like that. And so it, like, things can sometimes just roll off when you change your own energy. So I agree with that. So this is where Cheryl's talking about the woman at her conference who was not ready to change. So here's the thing that I wanted to say that Louise said about not being ready to change. That's what happens when people aren't ready to change. You can only make suggestions of how someone might support their own growth, but ultimately they need to be willing to do the work. We need to stop wanting people to do what they can't do or be who they can't be. I've always said that I'm not a salesperson. I'm not here to sell a way of life. I'm a teacher. If you want to come and learn from me, I'm happy to teach you. But I'm not going to force you to change your mind. That's your privilege. You have the freedom to believe anything you want, and if you want to take the steps in this direction and explore it, then fine. But if you don't, then do your own thing. It's a great attitude to have. I think if you are a healer or if you're a teacher like Louise was, that it would be hard to really just sort of have that like, you know what, I'm here and whoever is ready for my message is going to benefit from it. And anybody else who doesn't, then they're not right for me, as opposed to being like, oh, I could have really helped that person. Well, maybe that person wasn't ready. And we're all under the law of our own consciousness. Therefore, any problem created at any level of consciousness, therefore, any problem is created at the level of consciousness of the person involved. Your consciousness can't change the situation. Their consciousness needs to change. And see, again, that seems like another contradicting sort of thought of if we're changing our inner vibration, then, like Dr. Dyer would say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So it's not them out there. So then this is where it comes back to what I was saying. It's not them out there. It's not like, oh, these people that I work with are horrible. We are creating this in our world. So if we're irritated with the people that are around us, that's on us. I mean, they might be super irritating, but if we're letting it wreck our calmness or our inner peace, then that is on us. So we have to change. When people dismiss affirmations or decide that they're doing the kinds of things that we're talking about, or they think that it's silly and they're not going to stick with it, they just experience the same problems over and over again, and then they say affirmations don't work. They do work, they just need to be used consistently. I think that's my problem. I don't think I've ever stuck with this for very long. I've always had nice thought about it, but I've never actually, like when she talked about one situation or one person or one relationship, just saying every time you thought of that situation, just saying a positive statement. I've actually never done that for any length of time. I will say that over the last year, the main thing that I have been focusing on saying is, I'm going to be fine no matter what. I probably could say that in a better way. Like, I probably could say, I could change that and reframe that in a more positive way, I should say. But for now, it's been good to be able to say, like, I'm going to be okay. Because for a while, I didn't think I was going to be okay. So I'm glad we're doing this book, because I definitely could think of some more positive things to be bringing into a practice of affirmation. What about you guys? Our thoughts directly influence our life experiences. In this way, we are contributing to everything that occurs in our lives. If we find ourselves in the middle of trouble, we need to reach for new habits now and use our thoughts and energy in a more productive way. Affirmations help point us in the new direction so that we can focus on the better outcome. Yeah. And we can't be also thinking in this fantasy way of, oh, once this happens, then I'll be happy, or all of my problems will go away if this one thing happens. I mean, the main thing is that why do we want what we want? It's usually because we're trying to be happy, right? So if we just find happiness first, whether we have those things or not, that's the key. That's what the law of attraction is. And the thing is, sometimes you get to that point and you're happy and you're just like, I don't even really care if I have that thing anymore. Like, you could not have a ton of money and you could be happier than you've ever been in your life, and everything else is great and you're comfortable. But maybe you wanted to be a millionaire, but you're not, but you're happy. So you could still be continuing to work towards that millionaire goal. So then Louise is talking about the AIDS group that I told you about. So remember I said, well, how does it work? And Louise is saying, so you can say that it's crazy to think that an affirmation could do something in such a difficult situation. Like she talked about, like a mother showing up at the meeting. What could it possibly do? How could it influence someone else's behavior? And she actually says, I don't know. It went out into the ethers, and instead of the person having terrible thoughts about their family, they started to create space. Yeah. Where there could be a harmonious relationship. I don't know how this stuff works. That's the mystery of life. Isn't that funny? That's Louise saying that, and she seems to be so wise. So to hear her say, I don't know how it works. I just teach this stuff. I don't really know how it works. That's the mystery. That's kind of neat. I suggest that affirming a harmonious relationship with others can be applied to it in a variety of ways, Louise goes on. Whether you train yourself to keep affirming that you have harmonious relationships with your boss, your neighbor, your coworker, or an estranged family member, it's got to play out. Bypass, and the other thing that they both said too, because she was going to say, you're not trying to bypass your feelings entirely in the situation. So it's not like you think about your parents who abandoned you, and instead of like grieving and being angry and having those feelings, you immediately go to the affirmation. Yes, you want to affirm those things, but both of them are saying it's not like you are ignoring that you have the feelings, but you're just trying to make the affirmations stronger and more of a focus point. And hopefully over time, if you do get into this vibration of thinking more positively about a difficult situation, then hopefully some of those things will dissolve that you were so angry, or just like Cheryl and her husband in the car, where when she focused on bringing some peace and love into the situation, then that stupid wrong turn they took was just a thing of the past. And think about how that could have ruined their entire day. They could have gotten there to the park and just been on each other's nerves and just had a horrible, horrible day. So I'm glad they didn't. So we are allowed to have our initial reactions. We need to allow ourselves to feel whatever we feel. I thought that was an interesting point. And if you're looking for an affirmation at your job, I liked this one. I feel peaceful and calm at work. That is so simple, and I feel like I need to put that up at my desk because I really don't right now feel peaceful and calm at my work usually. So here's a good point. If you're not feeling that, like I just said, maybe that's an indication that you need to stop taking on extra projects. How about that? Or if you're feeling lonely in your marriage, you can hold the thought of a harmonious relationship, but you might also need to sit down with your spouse and talk about what's going on. When paid attention to, feelings let you know what it isn't working in your life. Then you can be ultimately pointed in the right direction to make change. Ultimately, it's that alignment of the head and heart that creates the alchemy that gives your affirmations power. Isn't that great? This is the very end of the chapter, and I just want to see if there's anything else. And what about situations that you really just feel like you have no control over it? You have to let go. That's the main thing that Louise was saying. You need to create a positive, pre-focused affirmation and then just let go that the outcome is out of your hands. You stop hanging on. Don't suffer. When there's nothing more you can do about the situation, just let it go, because you're only holding on to the past and the memories that you're taking up, then they're taking up too much room in your present. They're taking up too much present in your mind if you just are constantly thinking about the fact that you can't change it. And she mentions the mirror work again. I like this too. Louise says, so what about the things that we can't control, like the little negative things that push our buttons and keep us preoccupied throughout the day? So that's Cheryl asking Louise. And Louise says, that's easy. You just say, I'm no longer curious about things that will upset me. Can you imagine? I should just say that. Like as I walk by the dog pee spots, I am no longer curious about those dog pee spots. Yeah, because every time I see them, then I go down, I'm sending out rage to the dog, to the neighbors, to the people that let them live here. I mean, it's just this, yeah, if I walked by something like that, I'm no longer curious about things that will upset me. I'll have to try that one. And so Cheryl closes with saying, imagine not getting pulled into the drama of someone else's agenda. Now that is a habit worth dissolving. I hope you start to think about what habits in your own life would be worth dissolving. You might have to sit down and really think about what are some negative things that you're doing that you know are negatively affecting your life. And maybe you don't know the answer to how to fix them, but if you can find an affirmation that will turn the situation around, at least from a framework of positive thinking, then that should be the first start. Maybe I should set myself a goal of just doing an experiment and trying one thing. Like it could be something stupid like the dog pee spots on the grass. And just try to do it for a month. Let's see what our affirmation of the day is from Louise Hay's Wisdom Cards too. This is a long video. Thanks for sticking with me. There was so much to say from that one. I really enjoyed that chapter. All right, here's our affirmation of the day. I am motivated by love. That's a good one. Resentment, criticism, guilt, and fear come from blaming others and not taking responsibility for my own experiences and your own thoughts, I would add, right? So if you look at things and you think, am I applying love to this? Am I motivated by love in this situation, or am I motivated by my own ego or by the aggravation that I have or my own complaints? That's a really good one. I hope you're enjoying the book. I hope you'll say hi. I'm happy to always have comment. I read every comment that you send. So thanks for saying hi. And we are 2/3 of the way through this book, so we'll continue on our book. And guess what I realized? Today's the 11th. I never did a making October shine video. That's the first month that I forgot to do it. So I hope that you are having a nice October so far, and that you have thought of some great ways to enjoy the season. But I didn't do that video, and now it feels way too into the month to do it. So hopefully you can look back at Simple Abundance and get some of those joyful simplicities for fall, and be thinking about fun ways to mark the season, and pumpkins and apple pies and all the stuff that's out there. Love to you all, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks.